What up guys, Joachim here, and this video is going to cover kind of a review of Duolingo, and I'm just going to share some of my opinions on its effectiveness and what I think of it. As you can see, this was my Duolingo Greek tree, so I did start out at least Greek with... I started out Greek and Hebrew. You can see that my wife actually used my account for a while. She was doing French, and she had studied French in high school. She actually was the one who told me about Duolingo, and there are many positive things that I could say about Duolingo, but they would extend only to non-Latin alphabet languages. And so the way that I think that Duolingo is really good is if you do not, so in studying Greek, I am a native English speaker, and we obviously use the Latin alphabet for English, and Greek does not use the Latin alphabet. So if we go, now they've changed the tree actually, so it recently converted over to a new tree within the last few months, and I had completed it at one point. They added one section here at the end that I haven't opened up yet. I probably won't. I quit using Duolingo a while ago, but so I view it more as a beginner resource. Like, it's very helpful at giving you like a brief introduction to a language, and I obviously, you can see like these gold areas, I've had completed those at one point. The red ones I had only taken to the third crown. At one point I had completed most of this tree, but when it converted over, things changed around. I kept trying to get the new tree to pop up, so I would like delete my progress and then test out of a bunch of stuff. So that kind of explains why my tree looks odd right now, but I'm not sure how they do the introduction to the alphabet at this point. There's a warm-up, they say, and maybe later. So okay, I see. They're starting with some of the letters or ways of doing so. It's asking for na, which would be this one. Tap the matching pairs. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. So this is a really good way to be introduced to the alphabet. You kind of come in, you don't know what's happening. You're just trying to figure things out, and that's how language learning should work. So this would be a way that I think Duolingo is actually really good and is very effective for teaching languages, for learning things. But that's kind of where it extends to. I would do each of these things. I'm not going to go through all this, but you can see kind of how they're teaching you the alphabet in this case. It's just basically letters. There's not like sitting down and learning things. If you really want to learn like what all that stuff's called, there are videos you can look up for any language you're learning. It doesn't matter if it's Greek, Hebrew, Syriac. Any one of them is going to have some kind of thing. You can see when we go to the Hebrew section, that, if it ever pops up. Okay, so this one, everything's still gold on my tree in this. I'd completed it. And you can kind of see this is actually how I recommend. You should start out in some of these first levels kind of going to gold. And then eventually, probably by the time I got to this third crown or third checkpoint they have here, this is called a checkpoint, then, just take everything to like 1-2 levels, because you can do them really quickly that way and just get through it. So by this point, I took each one to 1 crown. You're just trying to get through this really quickly. It's just a beginner resource. After you've spent a few months on Duolingo, maybe it's time to move on. Don't hang out on Duolingo. Its learning curve is very short. Once you kind of have that introduction to the language, you can kind of type. I do recommend you learn to type using Duolingo. If it's not now, if you're starting with like another Latin alphabet language, I would not recommend Duolingo at all. I would recommend starting out with other learning resources, and I'll eventually make videos on what those learning resources are. But this is specifically like if you're learning Arabic, Russian, Greek, or Hebrew. Obviously, are the examples that I have here. I'm not sure what other languages they have that don't use this, but I just wanted to give you another example real quick before we move on of the way that they teach letters. So this one teaches letters completely differently. And I'm doing this on my phone, but I do recommend that you do it on a desktop primarily because you want to learn to type. You want to learn to do that, and you're basically. I would just put my fingers on home row. Home row, if you don't know, probably most of you do, but if you don't, if you put your left hand, if you put your pointer finger on F, there's this little button, and that row of letters beside it would be home row, and then the same with your right. You would sit it on J, and in the English alphabet on the keyboard, and the row beside that would be where you would sit the rest of your fingers. So if they just sit there, that's home row. And then, from there, you just, every time you type a letter or something, you move back to that home row, and that's kind of always your default position for typing. Well, when you learn to type in these other languages, obviously if you can't type in English, then that would be a good one to learn first. But learning to type in these other languages is very beneficial for every other learning resource that you would use going forward. I don't think it's essential. Obviously, people learn for thousands and thousands of years to speak languages without typing, but today we have these resources and we have these capabilities and things that we've never had before. So I think it's a very beneficial thing to learn at the beginning because it helps you open up to a lot of other learning resources. So let's look at this letters category on the Duolingo page real quick. And okay, so they begin immediately introducing you to words. So if you clicked on this, the dad is coming, or is the dad coming? So I know that because I've done Hebrew a bunch for a number of years. Is dad coming? Oh, is the dad coming? See, I guess that's where I failed. The dove likes bread. So this is a good one. Hayuna ahava halechem, or just lechem, not the bread, lechem. Hayuna ahavot lechem. So you can see I kind of messed it up a little bit when I said it, but okay. So anyways, also I'm not going to go through all of this, but it just starts you in without going through the letters at all, but you learn the letters through using them, and that's also very good. There is no wrong way to do that. The whole thing is that I think Duolingo really is just good at introducing you to these non-Latin alphabets. Let's look at what else is in here. Japanese, that would be a good example of a non-English or a non-Latin alphabet. Chinese, Russian, Korean, Arabic, some of these I mentioned before. Turkish actually uses that. Irish definitely uses Latin alphabet. Greek and Hebrew, those were the examples that I used. I don't know if Czech uses the Latin alphabet or not. Ukrainian does not. It uses the same alphabet, the Cyrillic alphabet that Russian uses. Vietnamese. So these are all examples of non-Latin alphabet languages. And that's where I think Duolingo excels. If you're learning a language like, say, French, Spanish, German, Italian, these are things I would not start using Duolingo for, because you spend too much time focused half between your native language and the target language, and I just don't think that's a very ideal scenario. There are better things to do, and I will discuss some of those in the future. Also free, so Duolingo is free, but just because it's free doesn't necessarily mean that it's good. And it's good for some things and it's not so great for others. But no matter what the case is, I would say Duolingo is a beginner language learning resource, and it's not something that you should be spending months and months and months on. Maybe a couple months to spending 45 minutes a day, doing, as many lessons in that time period as you can possibly get through, and then having a lot of exposure to the language in other ways is ways that I think Duolingo can be beneficial, and that's about the extent of it. So that would be my recommendations. That's how I view Duolingo. And I think I was listening a couple Frenham languages, or Fingham, I can't remember how to say the guy's name. He had recently made a review of Duolingo as well, and he said it was he quoted from someone else, Days of French and Swedish, where he said that Duolingo was a slightly useful waste of time or something like that. And, he agreed with the other guy, and I also agree with both of them that it's not a waste of time. They're both coming from the perspective of learning primarily Latin-based languages, Latin alphabet languages, I mean. And, from that perspective, I agree. It's a slightly useful waste of time. But, if you're learning a non-Latin alphabet language, that's where I think Duolingo kind of shines for introducing you to that script and introducing you to sentence structures in languages that use non-Latin alphabet scripts. So, all of that aside, I hope you guys are doing well. Let me know if you have any questions or thoughts in the comment section below, and I will talk to you in a video coming very soon.